Divine Providence for Man and Nature 3. To think makes a thing substantiates. To think either good or bad brings the same result in phenomena in the three-dimensional world. Outline of the process of substantiation. Ejection of will. Will solidifies. Spiritual material. Will solidifies. Atmospheric substance. Particle. United particle. Possesses power. Emits the latent power and by means of the fusion of the powers enhances the progress through every steps. The wills of the original materials become so various in the four-dimensional world since the beginning. Namely, the wills of the 7 and the 6 dimensions fill up the 5 and the 4-dimensional worlds and have made a great variety of them. A concept of the universe is made and the will and the original element start in the 4-dimensional world, where it is filled up by the spirit and the spiritual material, namely the original material. The original materials are given a mission and life respectively in the 5-dimensional world. The powerful original materials grow up to the spiritual material from the will and the original element. They further gain a lifetime. The 3-dimensional world is filled up by the 5 kinds of the original materials that come from each dimensional world. It is divine concept of the universe that all is intermingled one another. The materials of the original materials are mostly hydrogen, oxygen and carbon that comes later by bonding. At the beginning, these 3 elements become the original materials in the 3-dimensional world. Carbon is born in a strong action of fire and exists in the high dense materials. It makes things harden. The rocks and the stones contain it a lot. The original materials are largely divided into 2. The one from the lineage of Kunitsu, fatherly god, and another from the lineage of Amatsu, motherly god. The 4-dimensional world consists of the will, the spirit and the spiritual materials, and in the 3-dimensional world all of the dimensions are intermingled, bringing the desires and the wills of the upper worlds, and in the 4-dimensional world the thoughts and the intent of the original gods develop and advance to all the concept. And at last the gods have started the government for the holy reign. It is the beginning of theocracy. The parental god, the 2 gods, plan to make the gods of children in the 4-dimensional world. They have given their own partial spirit and characters to them. From the eldest son to all the gods of children are produced with their spirits. The gods respectively possess the spirits which are made up of the lineage of fatherly god, Kunitsu, and the lineage of motherly god, Amatsu. Both cooperate in making children without giving any abnormalities. Once a child returns to the origin, it restores to the parental gods. Because of the birth of the gods, a new thought and desire spring out, and the 4-dimensional world densely gathers the original materials of every stage. It is the world of the spiritual materials, so all wear the spiritual body on as clothes for the god spirit. In that world the gods respectively wish and desire from their nature and partake naturally the various original substances made of the spiritual materials and wear them as their clothes. It is a life wearing the spiritual body on the spirit. The gods can get what they want and can make the original materials themselves. But of course the original materials made by the original parental gods and those made by the gods in the 4-dimensional world are tremendously different in power. The spirit put on the spiritual body as clothed grows with the various desires and the wish, and it is colored by the mind, which gradually builds up man's distinctive characteristic. The original materials do the same process in the bodies of all the living creatures. They get into soil, water and salt and work together with them on the process of the metabolism. The process of the original materials in all the stages intermingle and exist in the real world. The real world has the more complexly mingled original materials and the more complex will or desire than those of the four-dimensional world. At least the original materials in the four-dimensional world keep staying in the spiritual materials and the spiritual bodies. Most of them are made and prepared by the original gods, whose will and desire base on the desires and the wishes and the communication interchange of all the other gods. The four-dimensional world presided over by the original gods at least is peaceful, joyful, vigorous and stable in its thoughts. From the beginning of the creation every dimension is made, and the 7 and the 6 dimensions emanates their wills and they gain life emission in the 5 dimensions. The original materials become the fundamental materials in the four-dimensional world and they become the spiritual materials and the spiritual bodies. The original materials are not consumed in the process of the metabolism. They help and support the living creatures to acquire their requirement for the necessities and make them strong for making a living. The original materials are only produced by the original God. They never be exhausted and never die out. They last forever. Like other living creatures, they have life that is regenerative and never be extinct. Its lifetime stays with the development process of an organism. For a long time it has been past as it is without any additions from the heaven since the times of the creation. Because of this significance, influence has been given to the four and the three-dimensional worlds as well as man and one's body. It has resulted in a great change in man's truth and origins. So that man has turned a vulgar that only sees and pursues one's satisfaction and tries to keep the present status. Not knowing a sense to see directly the universe and not knowing the connections with the upper worlds. And not knowing how one's body is constructed and not knowing how one is related to the nature, man has lost a mind of the original parental gods and fallen into the state where one only sees the needless. But man's body is contained in the container the gods have made. Time has come for people who have been absorbing the gods' materials, but have been fleeing from knowing the truth must open their spiritual eyes and ears to know where they really come from. It may say it should be as it is at the time of the creation, but it intentionally is done by divine plan. For that purpose temporarily the original gods have retired from this world and accordingly it has been influenced considerably. It is a time with no additional new substances provided by the heaven. The original God's will and desire become the original materials to make this world likewise. The gods and people's minds create the materials to make the spirits and another source of materials. Difference between them is that the materials the gods have made remain and kept forever. And those people have made are only the temporary product on the ground because those are born from only the emotions or the earthly matters. Those sometimes attach to man's spiritual body or the spirit itself or gather on the spiritual atmosphere. However, man can clear them off oneself. Preferably, man tries to be smart so as not to invite those and put one's spirit flee from those and not call the bads or the wrong circumstances. Then man can maintain one's health both in the mind and the body. Man is given the spirit by the gods. Whatever the difficult situation man is put in, one must overcome it and try to make oneself in the state of mind, icon Nanahaku, 1 spirit and 7 karmas. In order for man to be normal and keep one's spirit as the God spirit and karmas in the right place, one must always return to one's original state of mind. If man can place the spirit first, one can easily control karmas and maintain one's will healthy. Even a life on the ground, mostly man oneself invites the things of both the goods and the bads. One must always have a right vital spirit and avoid connections to the bads wisely. Man who originally stays with the gods can clear off the things and the matters that harm the refined atmosphere, or does not get dominated by the earthly reasons or the emotions on the ground. The bad thing is meant that one harms the others and betrays oneself. The gods guard man not to harm oneself with a false mind. The gods nurture man for the generations up to now. The will of the upper world reaches man to whom the original material abundantly is fed. The gods' will bases on the original mind, and the spirit reaches through the universe to the nature. It is a fair and square world opened for man. It is the natural way of man to know this fact. First, people respectively get conscious themselves of it and open their eyes and ears to see and hear actually the sound of the gods from a new age. People are now required to go toward enriching and advancing their power. People are in the new age never have realized the truth before on the ground and in the universe. Finally, it has arrived at this point where at last science contacts the gods. All is orderly, controlled and unitedly reigned. The four-dimensional world and all the gods in it govern and guard up to the earthly world. The desires and the will of the gods in the four-dimensional world benefit the worlds and the spiritual bodies with the delicate colors. If man desires and wishes to comply with the God's will, one's spirit and the spiritual bodies strongly acquire the power characterized to one's. The stronger the gods in the God spiritual world, the stronger man's spirit, will, and health in the real world. The gods are not a magician nor a conjurer. The gods have the scientific basis and are realistic. The gods and man are guarded by divine providence of the universe. They as a natural consequence all result in this divine providence. They have positioned in the order of the universe and acquired the way of a family of the universe. The universe, the original materials, the gods, and man are all created by the desire and the will of the original gods. They naturally possess and can express all the natures of the original gods. The vital spirit expresses itself with nothing but the joy and the pleasure to act freely. It is the world where the love of the gods is crystallized, and the love of the gods can reach all.